Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third secret project to release this year out of 4 that Brandon Sanderson did as part of his Kickstarter. I did not participate in the Kickstarter because of the cost. However, I did go and buy the hardcover, the regular hardcovers that Tor produced, and I read them so far. We have the first book, Tress of the Emerald Sea, which was a phenomenal standalone novel, and just terrific book and really enjoyable. And then we had, and this one was more of a humorous, traditional fantasy story a la The Princess Bride. And then you had The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England, which didn't land quite as well. There was quite a lot in this book that didn't quite work, but it's still a delightful book, and it's still really entertaining, I believe. And so I read both of those, enjoyed them, particularly Tress, and so I picked up Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, hoping I would enjoy it. I've been told by a few people that it's their favorite of the secret projects, and I was told it had a romance, which I really enjoy, and I was told that it's Brandon Sanderson's personal favorite of the 4. So I was excited to read it. And so when I read it, it was not what I expected, but it was still really entertaining. The first thing you can probably guess by the cover is that this is a very Asian-inspired story. The cultures that you read about in the book are very much based on Asian cultures, particularly in Korea and Japan. Brandon Sanderson actually spent some time as part of his mission down in Korea, and so he actually knows a little bit about that. And then he did some research on Japanese culture, and so it's very heavily Asian culture inspired. So if that's not your jam, I'm not sure this is going to work the best for you. It's certainly not mine. This is not the type of thing I would normally try to pick up, but yet I still was able to enjoy the book. I still think it was really entertaining. I still think it was really good. The book basically is about these two, for lack of a better word, worlds, and these two characters from these two different worlds. You have Yumi, who is from this ancient Korean, very traditional type world where everything is very strict, and she has this role, this religious role, where she is able to talk with the spirits and able to help impart miracles to the people. And then you have Painter. His real name is Nikaru, but he's known as Painter. And Painter is from this very modern day style Japan type world. And the two of them all of a sudden in one day wake up where they've kind of switched places, where he is in her world and he's very much real, and she's kind of, non-corporeal, and then she goes to his world where she's real and he's non-corporeal. And it's a very odd switching places story. I would compare it a little bit to Freaky Friday, but not quite as humorous or as specific about being in each other's bodies. It's more about just swapping places, more like. And because they're still in their bodies, it's just that everyone sees them as the other person. But anyway, regardless, it's about their romance. As it's a very slow burn romance, incredibly slow burn romance, and it's about them trying to figure out why all this magical stuff is happening, how they can fix it, what their purpose is in all of this, and it all comes to a dramatic and climactic conclusion at the end of the book. As you would expect, it's a Brandon Sanderson book. There's going to be a Sanderlanche. The Sanderlanche in this book is not as much of an action Sanderlanche as you would expect, because it's actually a much shorter. These secret projects are only about 360 pages each. Typical Brandon Sanderson books are 600 pages or 500 pages. So this is significantly shorter than his average novel. But the Sanderlanche here is more a Sanderlanche of information and world building. So if you're really into world building and magic systems and stuff, you'll enjoy this. I'm not. I'm a soft magic system person. And I saw one book reviewer say that this is Brandon Sanderson's soft magic system. Absolutely not. There is way more discussion of hard magic system in this book than should be considered a soft magic system. I do not consider this a soft magic system. Anyway, but back to my general review. I thought that the book is narrated by Hoyd, same narrator that we had in Dress of the Emerald Sea, and I think that Hoyd's voice naturally works better in Dress of the Emerald Sea. The humor style works better for him. His voice in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, it came through occasionally, but it wasn't as strong. It wasn't as defined. In my opinion, it should have been the character of Design who plays a part in this book. She should have been the narrator instead. I think that she would have worked better. And speaking of which, of the minor characters in this book, Design absolutely stole the show for me. I thought she was delightful. Every time she came on the page, I had a smile on my face. She was interesting. She brought some Cosmere tie-ins, if you're a Cosmere fan. But of course, if you're not a Cosmere fan, you might be a little bit confused on some of the world building, but I'm a Cosmere fan and I was confused on the world building anyway, so don't worry. You'll be fine, I think. But Design was delightful in this book, so she should have been the narrator. But anyway, I also thought that this book had incredible discussions about art. This book really explores the idea of why we do art, why we appreciate art, and who the art is for. There is, because Yumi has a special type of art that's also connected to her magic in her world, which is about stacking things up. And when you stack, usually it's rocks, a certain number of times you're able to connect with the spirits in some way, and it's kind of an art form for them. And then Painter, as you would expect by his name, is a painter, and he's what's called a nightmare painter. His job is to paint nightmares, to stop them. When the nightmares become real, and he's able to paint them and stop them, and then he changes them kind of by using his paint and artwork. And so art is very integral to this book, the discussion of why we do art, what art is, and all that stuff. And there was a great discussion throughout the book about who we do art for. Specifically, there's a discussion about audience and how art without an audience is pretty much meaningless. And art requires art isn't a great piece of art just because it's a great piece of art necessarily. It's a great piece of art because the people value that artwork. If people didn't value it, if people didn't put their assumption that it's a good piece of art, then it wouldn't actually be good. It's hard to be objective in that kind of a format. And so there's this can go today where people say, oh, well, this movie isn't real cinema, or this book isn't real literature. It's like, really, it goes down to what you put the value on as a society. Our society there's certain types of books that really take off. Audiences love that, so that's the high quality art in some ways, because that's what the people want. If people didn't want it, it wouldn't make as much money, and it wouldn't make the cultural impact. So it's just there's some great discussions there. There's also great not analogies. There's great, what I think is a great metaphor for AI in this book. There is a discussion about whether art can just be created artificially, whether it still has value if it's created artificially. And Sanderson in this book posits that no, it does not have value if it's created artificially and not through human contact, through human creation. And I just found that a really compelling and topical commentary in the book that I really appreciated. And so I thought that stuff was really deep in the book, and to me, that's what made the book, stand out. The romance in this book, as I mentioned, is incredibly slow burn romance. However, I loved it. I think this is a great example of how you can write great romances in your novels without writing explicit material or writing immoral actions on your character's part. You can still have the characters be chaste, be appropriate, and still write a great romance between them. I still personally think that the romance in Warbreaker between Ciri and Sisebrin is so much better. And I think that even better than that is the romance between Raoden and Serene in Elantris. So I still think those are better romances that Sanderson wrote. But I still think this is still very well done, very much appreciated. The ending of this book is certain to be controversial, and I was very angry at one point at the ending. And then something happened, and I was like, "Oh, that's so nice! Thank you for doing that, Sanderson. Thank you." So you will either be pleasantly surprised or unpleasantly surprised by the ending. I think because there's a nice twist with it. And this book also has a pacing issue where it's incredibly slow moving. It's not just the romance that's slow burn, the plot is slow burn. The first part is just essentially setting up the world and the characters with like there's no plot reason. The second part of the book really explores like, hey, there's the body switching stuff is happening, but not really the way it should be happening. And then the third part is when you start seeing, hey, problems are starting. And then, of course, the fourth part's the big conclusion and plot happens and whatever. But the first two parts really don't have much of a plot. It's just kind of there. And because of that, the book's incredibly slow. So it might be difficult for some readers to get into. When you compare that to a book like Tress of the Emerald Sea, this book, the plot starts on like page 2 or page 1. Like it's an incredibly fast hooking plot, which is why I think it's a better book, because it hooks you immediately. It hooks you fast. And Yumi just kind of takes its time to get there. Both are phenomenal books, but I would give the edge to Tress of the Emerald Sea in that regard. And I also think just the humor in Tress is better as well. Now, for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, I would give it an overall rating of an 8 out of 10. I still think it was really well done. I think it's my second favorite of the Secret Projects. I think it's for sure better than Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving in Medieval England, but it's not quite as good as Tress of the Emerald Sea, which was definitely the best so far. So it's kind of in the middle. I'm curious to see where the Sunlit Man goes. I'm hoping I enjoy it quite a bit. But I still really enjoyed this, especially I especially recommend it if you're a big Cosmere fan. There's a lot of Cosmere connections. If you're a big Brandon Sanderson fan, if you're a big Asian culture fan, or you're interested in getting into some Asian culture-inspired storytelling, I think you'll enjoy this book. But if you're none of those things, I'm not sure this is the book I'd recommend. If you're thinking, I want to read one of the Secret Projects, read Tress. I think that's a better fit. I think it's a better book to pick up, personally. But I still think this was a great book. So if you've read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, what did you think? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Were you surprised by the ending? The twist at the ending? That was really good. Let me know all the thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.